Hello, this is Daria, and a new original story from my channel of hard, real, and brutally honest life stories. The patient suddenly moved. Before that, he had been lying quietly, almost motionless, only his chest barely rising under the thin blanket. But now he jerked sharply, as if shocked by electricity, and tried to push himself up on his elbows. I feel awful, do you hear me? He whispered, and immediately choked on air. Olivia tore her gaze away from the foredrip, where a heavy bag filled with thick, dark red liquid was hanging, and looked at the man. A hoarse, broken wheezing sound burst from his chest. The patient's face became blotchy, deathly pallor around the lips and a feverish, painful flush on his cheeks. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead and temples. The patient's eyes wandered blindly around the room, unable to focus, and the nurse saw unconscious fear in them. "It's hard to breathe," he forced out again. "David is here." He clutched his chest and began breathing rapidly, as if he had been running at full speed and couldn't stop. "Help take this away." The patient shifted restlessly, reaching toward the foreline. He lunged to the side, tangled in the blanket. Olivia leaned over him, and the sharp, metallic smell hit her nose. The nurse anxiously placed her hand on the man's forearm. His skin was cold and sticky with sweat. "Dr. Robert Hale, please look. He's suffocating," she cried, turning toward the doctor sitting at the far end of the room, slouched in a chair, buried in his tablet. The attending physician reluctantly tore his eyes from the screen and glanced briefly at the patient. "Olivia, this is a normal protein reaction. Vascular spasm. Give him an antihistamine and potassium. It'll level out," he said in a casual tone. "Just don't start panicking. Crawford has a history of allergies." I read the chart. Olivia looked again at the trembling man under the blanket and didn't believe it. "But he's getting pale. Look at his lips." "Do your job and don't interfere," the doctor snapped irritably. "If we interrupt the transfusion because of every sneeze, we'll never raise his blood levels." The patient suddenly groaned and doubled over, clutching his lower back with both hands. Following her professional instinct, the nurse glanced at the urine collection bag. The transparent plastic catheter tube was visibly filling with a thick, terrifying dark liquid. Realizing that the patient's kidneys were starting to fail right now, Olivia felt everything inside her tighten with fear. "Dr. Robert, this isn't a typical reaction," she said more quietly now, but her voice became harder. "This is definitely his blood." The doctor raised his voice in anger. "Are you starting again? How many times do I have to tell you?" I said, "Carry out the order." The patient moaned again, arched his body, and convulsively grabbed the rail of the gurney. Olivia snapped. "Stop the transfusion," she shouted. "Right now, have you decided to give orders?" The doctor roared. "Get out of here and call the on-duty staff if you're not capable." Olivia didn't listen. Her fingers moved on instinct, clamping the plastic line shut. "Have you lost your mind?" The doctor jumped to his feet, flinging the tablet onto the chair. He lunged forward and roughly shoved her in the shoulder. Olivia staggered, hitting the floor stand. The needle tore out of the vein, and dark blood sprayed in a wide arc across the tiled floor, onto Olivia's hands and her uniform, instantly soaking the white fabric. At that moment, the ward doors flew open. The on-duty orderly rushed in at the sound of shouting. She froze in the doorway, pressing her hands to her face in horror at the sight of the blood-covered floor. For another second the patient convulsed, wheezing, then heavily collapsed onto his side. His face turned gray, his gaze drifted away. "Get her out of here." The attending physician angrily pointed at the rebellious nurse. Obeying the commanding tone, the orderly grabbed Olivia by the shoulders and literally pushed her out of the room. Olivia remained standing alone in the empty, cool corridor. Slowly, she raised her hands and stared at her palms, where someone else's blood, still warm just minutes ago, had begun to dry, tightening the skin into a dark, unpleasant crust. A team of emergency physicians ran past her into the ward. Who called them, and when Olivia didn't understand. Leaning against the wall opposite the window, she felt her knees treacherously shaking. Watching indifferent gray clouds slowly drift across the sky beyond the glass, Olivia listened to the dull pounding of her heart. A silent prayer slipped from her lips. She begged for only one thing, that the person behind the closed door would survive. After some time, Robert Hale emerged from the room, pale. His lips were trembling. "You're trash. Do you even understand what you've done?" he said quietly, with such pressure that the words cut deeper than a shout. "I was saving his life," the nurse replied. "You sabotaged the treatment," he snapped. "You shut down the system on your own. You overstepped your authority." From her office, the head nurse, Regina Miles, peeked out, gave Olivia a quick look, and covered her mouth with a fleshy hand. "Oh my God, just look at her. Covered in blood, like from a slaughterhouse." "He was dying," Olivia said flatly. "He had incompatible blood." The head nurse looked at Robert Hale, looming over the slight nurse, and smirked. "Here you go again, Olivia, with your fantasies. You always think everyone around you is an idiot, and you're the only smart one." Robert Hale didn't let up. "Do you even understand who this is? This is Michael Crawford, the deputy governor. You've just created a scandal for the entire state." "He's a human being," Olivia shot back. "He was in pain. He was suffocating. And now he's in intensive care," the doctor cut in. "And if he doesn't make it out, you'll be the one to blame." The gurney with Crawford was rolled out of the room and pushed toward the intensive care unit. The oxygen mask on the patient's face fogged up. He was breathing convulsively. The emergency physician slowed his step near the doctor and nurse and quickly asked, "Who shut down the system?" "She did," Regina Miles said confidently, pointing at Olivia. "On her own, without an order." The emergency physician shifted his gaze to Olivia. "Why?" "Hemolytic shock," she said shortly. Robert Hale tried to say something, but the emergency physician cut him off. "Don't try. The tests confirmed incompatibility. 5 more minutes, and we would have been taking him to the morgue." The attending physician swallowed hard. His chin began trembling even more. "But everything was documented in the chart." "We know how everything was documented in that chart," the emergency physician cut in. "Was a compatibility test done at all?" The head nurse cut into the conversation in a loud whisper. "Do you even realize what you're saying? This is a scandal. This is a human life," the emergency physician replied calmly and hurried off to catch up with the gurney. The deputy medical director stepped out of the elevator, wearing a white coat, smooth, smelling of expensive cologne. What kind of rally is this? While Regina Miles and Robert Hale hurried to justify themselves, he stood silently, frowning at the nurse pressed against the wall, hiding her blood-stained hands behind her back. Then he stopped the flow of words with a gesture and, turning to Olivia, said dryly, "Hand over your shift and write a statement. In detail. On what grounds a member of the nursing staff interfered in the treatment process and violated the physician's orders." "On the grounds that he was dying." Olivia lifted her eyes to him. "That will be decided by a commission," the deputy said sharply. "And for now, you're suspended. Go wash yourself and don't frighten people." At home it was quiet. Olivia walked into the entryway without turning on the light and pressed her forehead to the cool mirror. Her son, a college student, was already asleep. The apartment smelled faintly of a slightly burnt casserole. The silence pressed down and made her uneasy. She went into the kitchen and sat at the table without switching on the lamp. In the darkness, a white mortgage payment slip stood out, clipped to the refrigerator. Olivia stared at it, and inside her everything tightened from the unavoidable disaster. "They'll fire me. Tomorrow they'll definitely fire me." The thought made her nauseous. She would have to go in and justify herself to polished people in high offices who had already decided everything long ago. She went to the sink, turned on the water, and started scrubbing her hands again, even though they had been clean for a while. The smell of blood still clung to her. In her head, drowning out thoughts of debt and the search for a new job, the face of today's patient rose again and again. "Please let him live," she repeated to herself like a spell. "If he lives, it means I did everything right." The next day, Olivia was summoned for 9 a.m. She barely slept that night. She lay for a long time staring at the ceiling, seeing the man's pale face, his frantic movements, remembering the convulsive, ragged gasps. The office was stifling. At a long table sat 6 people: the hospital director, the deputy medical director, the head of the department, the attending physician, the hospital's lawyer, and the head nurse. "Sit," the director said carelessly. Olivia sat on the edge of the chair. "So," the deputy began, flipping through papers, "yesterday you interrupted a blood transfusion for patient Michael Crawford on your own initiative. Do you confirm that?" "Yes," Olivia said. "On what grounds?" the deputy asked, not looking up from the documents. "He went into hemolytic shock," Olivia answered. The department head smirked. "Just like that, you diagnosed him on the spot." "I saw the symptoms," Olivia began to explain. "He was suffocating. He had pain in his lower back. Dark urine. His blood pressure was dropping." "Are you a doctor?" the director interrupted. "No," Olivia stared straight ahead. "Then why are you deciding it was shock and not a reaction to the medication?" The director didn't hide his contempt. Olivia looked him in the eyes. "Because the emergency physician confirmed incompatibility. He ran tests." The director spread his hands, as if to show there was nothing more to discuss. The deputy medical director slowly took off his glasses and began wiping them with the edge of his coat. Then he looked at the nurse with a kind of pity. "Olivia, you understand what stress is. In that fatal minute, when you panicked and decided to violate protocol, you could have imagined anything. You're talking about dark urine, kidney failure, hemolytic shock. But here in front of me is a fresh official lab report. There's nothing like that in the parameters. Everything is clean. Tell us honestly, did the emergency physician show you the test results yesterday, or did you just decide to trust his words? Because he, by the way, was on the verge of a breakdown himself." The lawyer spoke up. "From a legal standpoint, the nurse's action can be classified as exceeding authority and unauthorized interference in the treatment process." "So, you want to make me the guilty one?" Olivia asked in a fallen voice. "We want to clarify the facts," the deputy replied coldly. "For now, write us an explanation. State that you shut down the system on your own initiative, without the attending physician's permission." Olivia looked at the blank sheet the head nurse slid toward her, and, scanning the faces in front of her, asked, "And will the explanation state that the blood was mixed up?" The department head asked sharply. "What are you accusing us of?" "I'm saying the patient was almost killed," Olivia snapped. "And now you want me to answer for it." The director motioned for the department head to calm down and said softly, "Listen, Olivia. You're a young woman. You still have a long career ahead of you. Don't ruin life for yourself or for people." "I'm not ruining anything," she said. "I was saving it." He leaned forward, bracing himself on the table. "Then sign the explanation." Olivia demonstratively folded her hands in her lap. "I won't." Everyone in the office froze. The director's face turned red. All of them stared at the slight nurse sitting in front of them. The deputy medical director said slowly, "Then we will raise the question of your dismissal." "Raise it," Olivia cut back. That same day, Olivia was moved to night shifts. Regina Miles met her at the nurse's station and, without looking her in the eyes, said, "For now, you'll work nights. Think about it. Maybe you'll get smarter." The next few days turned into a trial of silence for Olivia. They didn't fire her right away, but it was as if an invisible, impenetrable wall had been built around her. Nurses who had just yesterday discussed weekend plans with her now hurriedly looked away. Doctors passed by without even giving her a brief nod. She worked night shifts, performing her duties with a kind of mechanical, drilled precision. In the emptiness of the hospital corridors at night, her own loneliness felt almost tangible. Toward the end of another night shift, Olivia was told that Crawford had regained consciousness and was demanding to see her. She felt not joy, but a strange, frozen tension. Walking down the long corridor of the intensive care unit, she caught sideways glances from the on-duty nurses. In those looks, curiosity and fear were mixed. To everyone, she was already finished material. A person with a sentence in her pocket. The room was quiet. Only the medical machines beeped steadily. Crawford turned his head with effort toward the person who had entered. "Come closer," he said hoarsely. Despite the weakness, The habit of giving orders was still felt in his voice. "I was told that you saved me, and someone whispered to me that they decided to make you a sacrifice for it." The nurse nodded silently. "Do you understand, Olivia, that you committed professional suicide?" Crawford smirked faintly, and deep wrinkles gathered at the corners of his eyes. "Today they brought me papers. Doctors unanimously insist that you almost sent me to the other side with your initiative." Olivia stood at the edge of the bed, and she wanted to scream from the injustice. She unconsciously clenched her fingers into a fist, feeling her nails dig into her palm. "I did what I had to," she answered, trying to keep her voice from breaking. "I saw that your kidneys were starting to fail. I saw that you were dying." Michael Crawford sighed heavily and turned his gaze toward the window. "And in their reports, there's nothing like that. Everything is clean. Impossible to pick apart. And what about me? I'm just a patient. An official? Yes, but not a medical professional. The commission won't listen to my sensations. My feelings against their reports, analyses, and expert conclusions. You understand that." He fell silent. Olivia waited. "Tomorrow morning they'll crush you," he continued more quietly, staring at the ceiling. "They have administrative power, lawyers, and flawlessly forged paperwork. And you have nothing except my words, my sensations. And, to be honest, I'm not even completely sure myself. That's hardly enough to protect you against their expert opinion." He nodded toward the medication schedule hanging by the bed. Olivia felt truly afraid. She had been waiting, if not for rescue, then at least for simple human support, and instead heard a cold statement of her defeat. "So, you also think I shouldn't have interfered?" she asked. A bitter lump rose in her throat, making it hard to breathe. "I think the truth is expensive. Sometimes it costs a career." "Go, Olivia. Thank you for coming. I need to rest." She had already taken hold of the door handle, feeling the last hope burning out inside her, when she heard his dry, colorless voice behind her. "Until tomorrow. And still, thank you. I hope you find the strength to stay in the profession." Olivia stepped into the corridor and closed the door behind her. It sounded like an epitaph. He didn't say, "I'll help you stay." He said, "Try on your own if you can." As if he were saying goodbye in advance. The disciplinary commission began the next morning. At the long table sat its members, several people in strict suits and white coats. In the stuffy room, their faces looked equally gray. They spoke quietly, shifting folders, but it was clear that their eyes kept returning to the center of the table. There sat the regional chief transfusion specialist, gray-haired, with a heavy gaze behind his glasses. He leafed through the medical record slowly, paying no attention to the whispering and bustle around him. The hospital director stood by the window with his hands clasped behind his back. He tried with all his might to appear calm, but his tense, rigid neck betrayed him, as did the way his jaw muscles twitched with every question from the expert. When Olivia finished speaking, a heavy, almost tangible pause hung in the room. The director barely smirked. In his version, the nurse's words meant nothing against the perfectly filed documents in the folder. The commission's lawyer was already reaching for the dismissal order form when there was a knock at the door, followed by the familiar sound of wheelchair wheels. The deputy governor was wheeled into the room, wearing a hospital gown. Crawford was pale, but his gaze was sharp and alert. His aide pushed the wheelchair. The men at the table fell silent. The buzzing of the ceiling lamp became audible. "Please continue," Crawford said quietly. "I'm very interested to hear how you intend to punish the person who corrected your fatal mistake." Without waiting for an invitation, the aide stepped forward and placed a package with the Regional Blood Center logo in front of the chief transfusion specialist. "This is what is missing from the official medical record," Michael Crawford continued. "But this is what was in my blood when I regained consciousness." The gray-haired transfusion specialist adjusted his glasses and unfolded the documents. The other members of the commission froze. The hospital director stopped tapping his fingers on the windowsill, and his face began to take on an earthy tone. In the room, only the steady buzzing and crackling of the lamp could be heard, the ticking of the wall clock, and the rustle of paper beneath the expert's fingers. The transfusion specialist read for a long time. His eyes moved slowly across the lines. His brows drew tighter and tighter at the bridge of his nose. Finally, he slowly raised his eyes to the attending physician. "This is already interesting," the expert said in an unnaturally dry voice. Then his heavy gaze turned toward the hospital director. In the medical record, it states that the patient was transfused with his own type O-negative blood. However, you were unable to provide the empty container for verification. And this here is an independent analysis. The regional chief transfusion specialist raised the documents handed to him by the deputy governor's aide. And it says something entirely different, namely, that signs of an Rh incompatibility were found in Crawford's blood. Everyone held their breath as the respected expert disdainfully pushed the folder with falsified results aside with 2 fingers and again lifted the report from the independent laboratory. "Look at these indicators. This is an unequivocal, indisputable picture of a severe hemolytic shock. This cannot be forged and cannot be hidden. These traces appear only when incompatible blood is transfused into a person. You tried to mislead me with falsification, but this analysis..." The transfusion specialist broke off. He looked at Olivia, sitting forlornly on the edge of her chair before the merciless commission. "And we must all acknowledge that the actions of this woman, this brave nurse, are the sole reason we are not discussing a fatal outcome here today." The director flinched, as if he wanted to object, but under the transfusion specialist's icy gaze, he only clenched his jaw tighter. Silence filled the room. Everyone understood how this would end. The regional transfusion specialist rose heavily from his seat and delivered his verdict. "All materials from the independent examination and this medical record will be immediately transferred to the prosecutor's office. There is clear evidence here of official falsification and the creation of conditions that endangered a patient's life. The hospital director and responsible staff are suspended from duty pending the investigation." Olivia sat motionless, unable to believe what was happening. She no longer expected a miracle. She had already accepted exile. And now she felt no triumph, only a strange, ringing silence in her ears. "You are all dismissed," the transfusion specialist announced and walked straight toward the stunned Olivia. He patted her on the shoulder in a fatherly way and added more gently, "Thank you. Such vigilance is rare." They left the office together. The door closed behind them, cutting off the muffled voices and the sharp, breaking shout of the hospital director trying to argue something with the lawyer. When the elderly transfusion specialist left her, Olivia lingered in the corridor, not knowing what to do next. One by one, stunned hospital employees exited the office. The former attending physician, Robert Hale, drifted past her on unsteady legs. His gaze wandered aimlessly as he walked by, muttering something incoherent. Olivia watched him go. The aide slowly wheeled Crawford out. Michael Crawford raised his hand slightly, signaling them to stop. "Well then, Olivia, congratulations," he said. "You won." "We won," Olivia replied. "If it weren't for your folder, they would have crushed me." The deputy governor extended his hand to her. A mark from the injection was still visible at the bend of his elbow. Olivia hesitated for a second, then placed her hand in his. His grip was firm and warm. "What will you do now?" he asked. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "Probably just go home. For the first time in these weeks, I'll sleep without nightmares." "A good plan," Crawford nodded. "But keep in mind, people like you don't stay without work for long. I'll make sure that in the new chapter of this hospital, you're offered a worthy position where you don't have to fight your own conscience." He squeezed her hand once more and signaled his aide to move on. Olivia adjusted the collar of her uniform, took a deep breath, and headed in the opposite direction, toward the locker room. Ahead of her lay a calm evening, cool street air, and, at last, confidence in tomorrow. A month later, the loud case of document falsification was still being discussed in break rooms, but the fear of all-powerful management and the code of silence built to conceal errors and official crimes finally began to dissipate. The former leadership awaited trial, and the department adjusted to new rules, strict and fair. Robert Hale was dismissed for gross violation of professional duties and falsification of records. With such a mark in his file, the path to reputable clinics was closed to him. The deputy governor visited the department for a routine checkup. Before turning toward the doctor's office, he stopped at the nurse's station. An open folder with orders lay on the counter, and beside it, a brand new, gleaming badge. Crawford's eyes slid over the lines of the document and stopped at Olivia's name. Next to it was her new title, Senior Nurse of the Department. At that moment, Olivia stepped out of a patient room. She wore a fresh uniform, her hair neatly pulled back. There was a new grace in her movements, the confidence of a woman who knew her place. Seeing her former patient, she stopped and instinctively reached toward her chest to adjust her badge. Her fingers touched only fabric. She had already removed the old one, and hadn't yet pinned on the new. "Congratulations on your appointment, Olivia," Crawford said, nodding toward the folder. "Justice suits you." "Thank you," Olivia smiled. "How is your health?" "The doctors say my numbers are like an astronaut's," he chuckled. "My kidneys are working perfectly. It turns out that when treatment follows protocol instead of someone's whims, recovery goes faster." He glanced once more at the new badge lying on the counter and added more seriously, "I'm glad you stayed in this hospital. Now I'm calm for myself and for those who will come here." Crawford walked down the corridor toward the doctor's office. Olivia picked up her new badge. She fastened the pin to her uniform, and determined resolve burned in her eyes. She was exactly where she belonged. And you. Write whether you like this story, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. A new story will be released here in just a few days. Don't miss it.